the introduction, and I will get started with our sutta, the link to which I have in the chat. So this is a very interesting and good sutta that gives a little overview of the practice. You know, people often, um, when they think of Buddhist practice, they think of Buddhist meditation. And when they think of Buddhist meditation, they think of sitting down and following your breath. And of course, that is part of it, but there's much more to that. The practice as laid out by the Buddha in the suttas, the ancient discourses, um, involves a holistic approach, a multifaceted approach, doing a variety of different things. And so you will hear in the sutta some of the aspects that the Buddha suggests that we focus on um, in doing this practice. I think I just saw a notification from Susie, but she's not here. Unless this is. That was interesting. Welcome, Starlight. Okay, we'll begin. So this sutta is the 39th sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, which is the middle-length discourses of the Buddha. It's probably the most well-known of these Nikayas, these discourses that form what's now usually called the EBTs, or early Buddhist texts. These are the oldest, the most ancient, and closest to the original words of the Buddha we're ever going to get, pending any new archaeological finds or anything like that. So, and these were originally transmitted orally and predate, before there was Mahayana and Theravada and Vajrayana and all the different types. As a matter of fact, you'll be able to pretty much go to any monastery of any tradition, and you'll probably be able to find this in the library. So we'll get started here. This is called the Maha-Assapura Sutta. In English, it's just the Greater Discourse at Assapura, which is a location. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Angan country, at a town of the Angans named Assapura. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. And um, one of the things I did want to add briefly is some modern scholarship regarding the suttas in relation to the majority of the suttas. You'll see this, that the Buddha is addressing the bhikkhus, and modern scholarship has shown, and many of the scholars um, are in unison regarding this, that just because it says that the Buddha was talking to the bhikkhus does not mean that there was not a mixed group there to listen to the talk. So they could say that uh, the Buddha was addressing the most senior, of the mixed group that was there, which would be the bhikkhus. So pretty much at any time that he did a talk, especially if it's in a town, um, it's to be expected that there will be a variety of different people that would be listening to this talk. So, continuing, there the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, venerable sir, they replied. The Blessed One said this. Recluses, recluses, bhikkhus, that is how people perceive you. And when you are asked, what are you? You claim that you are recluses, since that is what you are designated and what you claim to be. You should train thus. We will undertake and practice those things that make one a recluse, that make one a Brahmin, so that our designations may be true and our claims genuine, and so that the service of those whose robes, alms food, resting place, and medicinal requisites we use shall bring them great fruit and benefit, and so that our going forth shall not be in vain, but fruitful and fertile. So the Buddha is basically saying that if you claim to be this way, this is how you should practice, so that you are not being hypocritical, so that you are actually worthy of your claim. When the Buddha uses the term talking about somebody as a Brahmin, um, he's not meaning the typical person of the Brahmin caste in the society at that point. A Brahmin is in the caste system are the uppermost caste. And again, this is caste system just like in modern India today, where you're born into a caste and that's the caste where that you live in your whole life. So the Brahmins are the top tier. And so the Buddha's response to this caste system is that the top tier, somebody who he calls a Brahmin, is somebody who, through their actions, is somebody worthy of respect. And this is people who practice the Dhamma and who follow the Dhamma, who live the Dhamma. So this is what he means by that make one a Brahmin. And the monastics survive. They have 4 requisites. They have robes, clothing, alms food, shelter, and medicines. And the Buddha is very clear throughout the suttas about the importance of those who practice being worthy of the generosity of people. So this is the reason why the Buddha is discussing this. So the first section is conduct and livelihood. And what bhikkhus are the things that make one a recluse, that make one a Brahmin? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. We shall be possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. The Pali words here are hiri and ottappa. And this is, something, shame and fear of wrongdoing is something that is almost, in these modern times, seen as a bad thing. Shaming somebody is really bad. But it's important here that in our practice we have these feelings of shame and fear of wrongdoing, so that we understand the consequences of our actions, and we fear doing these wrong actions because they're harmful to ourselves and others. And a note from Bhikkhu Bodhi, the translator, I'll read this. Shame, hiri, and fear of wrongdoing, otapa, are two complementary qualities designated by the Buddha as the guardians of the world, because they serve as the foundation for morality. Shame has the characteristic of disgust with evil, is dominated by a sense of self-respect, and manifests itself as conscious. Fear of wrongdoing has the characteristics of dread of evil, is dominated by concern for the opinions of others, and manifests itself as fear of doing evil. So that is shame and fear of wrongdoing. And for those of you who have not been to one of my sessions before, just as a quick aside, if you have any questions or comments during this period, you can always feel free to type them up. You're not interrupting me, it's okay. Um, as long as you're not going in voice. But if you're typing a question or anything like that, that's perfectly acceptable, and I will answer the question as I see them. So if you have a question as we go along, or you'd like me to clarify something that I didn't discuss, please feel free to type it in the chat. Okay, let's continue on. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus. Here we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. That much is enough. That much has been done. The goal of recluseship has been reached. There is nothing more for us to do, and you may rest content with that much. Bhikkhus, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. So having this proper context and fear of doing harm to yourself and others is just the beginning. What more is to be done? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our bodily conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified bodily conduct. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing, and our bodily conduct has been purified. That much is enough. That much has been done. The goal of recluseship has been reached. There is nothing more for us to do, and you may rest content with that much. Bhikkhus, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. What more is there to be done? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our verbal conduct shall be purified, clear, and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified verbal conduct. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct has been purified. Our verbal conduct has been purified. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Bhikkhus, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. What more is there to be done? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our mental conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified mental conduct. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct and verbal conduct have been purified. Our mental conduct is purified. That much is enough, and you may rest content with that much. Bhikkhus, I inform you, I declare to you, those who seek the recluse's status do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. What more is there to be done? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our livelihood shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained. Hello, Jai. Welcome. Good to see you. We will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified livelihood. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily conduct, verbal conduct, and mental conduct have been purified, and our livelihood has been purified. That much is enough. ... So, Bhikkhu Bodhi has started to ellipse some of the repetition to make things shorter, and you may rest content with that much. Bhikkhus, I inform to you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status do not fall short of the goal of reclusion, while there is more to be done. Okay, so I'll pause right here to go over what we just went over. It's a lot of reading, but it's fairly fairly simple. This is the section of conduct and livelihood. So this section is the shame and fear of wrongdoing, the purifying our thoughts, words, and deeds, and also our livelihood. So this is what would be considered the sila aspect of the practice. Sila, often translated as virtue or morality. Basically, sila is taking it upon ourselves to practice living by virtuous principles. There's no commandments in Buddhism. There's no thou shalt nots. But there is precepts. And precepts are not forced upon anybody, nor are they given by anybody. Precepts are what you take on yourself as part of the practice because you see the benefit of them. When you are skillful, there's two words that are important here. There's kusala and akusala, these two Pali words that you will see hundreds of times in the suttas. And kusala is skillful or wholesome or beneficial. Akusala is unskillful, unwholesome, unbeneficial. So we want to make sure that what we say, what we do, and what we think, and how we live our lives is skillful. And why is that? Because when we act in skillful ways, we do things that are beneficial to yourselves and others. You make the world around you a better place. One of the very basic principles that a beginner Buddhist follows, or a lay Buddhist follows, is the 5 precepts. That's taking training rules upon yourselves to refrain from harming beings, to refrain from stealing, to refrain from sexual misconduct, to refrain from lying, and to refrain from using any substances that cause heedlessness. Thank you, Dar. And so these are principles. Um, my preceptor, um, preceptor means the person who basically ordained me, um, who is Bhante Gunaratana, and he said something at a talk about a month ago, that I had never heard anybody explain before, and it fit me, and it hit me so much that I will always use it from here on in. And he described the difference between what a principle and a rule. A rule is something that is imposed upon you by society. A principle is a way of life that you take upon yourself. So the Buddha is exhorting us in this sutta that we're reading to take on these principles, to make this part of your practice. And this is part of the overall teaching of the Buddha. This is the section on our conduct and our livelihood. And there is a reason why this is done this way. The reason is because our sila acts as a basis for concentration. Our sila directly affects and benefits our meditation practice. And in addition to our sila, there's also restraint, which is the next section. Restraint of the senses section. What more is to be done, bhikkhus? You should train yourself. We will guard the doors of our sense faculties. On seeing a form with the eye, we will not grasp at its signs and features. What does this mean, signs and features? This is when we see something and we obsess over it, and we obsess over the different aspects of it, the features. Like if we see a beautiful woman or an attractive man or whatever, our attractions are, when we say, oh, their hair and their eyes and this and that and all these, that's signs and features. What's that is doing is propagating craving. You're propagating it in your mind by going over all of these things. You're attaching and obsessing to these things. So this is what the Buddha is saying, is to guard your senses in this regard, which is helpful when it's very helpful for a monk, but it's also helpful for a layperson. Like if you're walking in public with your significant other, and then so you walk by and there's somebody who's really, really attractive, and you start staring at them, and then your significant other looks at you and not might not be in happy ways. That's one little example, um, but I'll explain as we go a little bit more into this why we actually follow this practice, especially at least during like when we want to go on a meditation retreat. Um, this might not be something that the average layperson wants to really focus on, but it's still important for the meditation practice in general. So, on seeing with a form with the eye, we will not grasp at its sign and features, since if we left the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade us. Covetousness and grief. What is this? This is attachment and aversion. So we see this form with our eyes, and we like it or we dislike it. Covetousness and grief. We will practice the way of its restraint. We will guard the eye faculty. We will undertake restraint of the eye faculty. And then it goes likewise on hearing sound with the ear, on smelling odor with the nose, on tasting flavor with the tongue, on touching a tangible with the body, on cognizing a mind object with mind. We will not grasp at its sign and features. Since if we left the mind faculty unguarded, evil unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade us. We will practice the way of its restraint. We will guard the mind faculty. We will undertake the restraint of the mind faculty. And why are attachment and aversion, why are covetousness and grief something to be avoided? It's because these are the primary blocks to our meditation. These are the primary blocks to tranquility, calm, peace, and deep concentration. Because our mind is obsessed with these experiences that we're having and is obsessed with, I like this, I don't like this person did this, I like that, I don't like this, and just going over on and on and on, and causing all kinds of agitation and um, busyness in the mind. Whereas a meditator, we're trying to go the opposite way. And you can see this if you're a meditator. You can see if you have a busy day, or there's an experience that occurred that has your mind moving a mile a minute, trying to sit down and then trying to meditate is really, really hard. Not even just a regular day, a regular day as a monastic or as a lay person, to sit down at the end of the day and to try to meditate, try to develop a deep stillness when your mind wants to think about all of the things that happened during that day. This person did this, that happened, I did this today, I feel good about that, I did this today, I feel bad about that. All of these things that busy the mind. These are all obstructions to deep stillness and concentration. So, we will not rest with it. Since if we left, okay. Now, because you may think thus, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily, verbal, and mental conduct and livelihood have been purified, and we guard the doors of our senses. That much is enough. And you may rest content with that much. Because I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. And there's some people that are probably like, really? I'm doing all this and there's still more? But yes, there is more. The next section, moderation in eating. What more is to be done? Because you should train thus. We will be moderate in eating. Reflecting wisely, we will take food neither for amusement nor intoxication, nor for the sake of physical beauty and attractiveness, but only for the endurance and continuation of this body, for ending discomfort, and for assisting in the holy life. Considering thus, I shall terminate old feelings without arousing new feelings, and I shall be healthy and blameless, and shall live in comfort. This is something that is reflected upon by us monastics every day. And if you come to the monastery, um, you also, this is part of what we chant every day before our meals. Um, and if you come for a retreat, this is also a reflection that when we sit to eat, we're not doing it to sit around enjoying sensual pleasures. And we don't want to eat just because this tastes good and I like it, but we're eating um, to break through the liking and the disliking. We're eating because we want to keep this body healthy and not because of this craving or that craving. But of course, in normal society, eating is a fun social thing. It's what we do. I grew up in a big Italian family. I know all about eating. I was also almost 400 pounds once, so I know all about the various aspects of eating and why people do it. Like being an emotional eater, which I was slash still am in many regards. Um, so moderation in eating is something that helps, um, just like we're guarding our senses. We're guarding our senses while we're eating too. We're not letting ourselves get caught in the signs and features of the food. Oh, that food, that looks so good. It looks, I like this the way this looks. And it looks like it's going to taste so good and all these kind of things. And getting wrapped up in all the craving. And again, this is maybe not something that the average layperson, um, is too concerned with on a daily basis. But no problem, Rolo. Have a good night. Good to see you as always. Um, but if it is something that you would like to take on, to practice, or at least as a reflection, people like Catholics and different people of different religions, they have prayers before they eat. This is a reflection that a practicing Buddhist can do before they eat. And so the Buddha again, we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Bodily, verbal, and mental conduct and livelihood are purified. We guard the door of our senses, faculties, and we are moderate in eating. And the Buddha says again, don't get lazy. There's still more. Wakefulness. What more is to be done? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. We will be devoted to wakefulness. During the day, while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. And what are obstructive states? Kind of like they're what I've been talking about. All of these things that are in our mind, based on the previously, if we had not been watching our senses, if we're not um, uh, trying to be virtuous in our thoughts, words, and deeds. All of these things that come to our mind, these obstructive states. Um, Covetousness, ill will, uh, restlessness and remorse, sloth and torpor, and doubt. These are what's called the five hindrances. These are the main things that keep us from calm, peaceful meditation. These are obstructive states. So, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. In the first watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. Obviously, um, the average person is not walking and meditating all day and night, not even monks. I can guarantee you that after this, I will not be walking all day, all night, and then being fresh and chipper to start my day at 4 o'clock in the morning. That will not happen. But so it's not necessarily um, important for you to take everything said in this sutta with um, with exactness as to how you should live your life, but to understand the aspects of this practice and how you can adopt it to your life, and the reason behind why the Buddha is exhorting us to practice in this way. No person, whether a lay person or a monastic, wants to feel like their meditation is a waste of time. Right? We want to benefit from our meditation, and by implementing these parts of our practice, we can benefit from our meditation. So, okay, while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of those states. In the middle watch of the night, we will lie down on our right side in the lion's pose, with our foot overlapping the other. Mindful and fully aware, after noting in our mind the time for rising. After rising in the third watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting. Oh, by the way, this gives you about 2 to 3 hours of sleep. Because the Buddha slept about 2 hours a night. Otherwise, he was either teaching or meditating. So, don't, it's okay if you don't think that you can do this. I know I can't. So, okay. After rising in the third watch of the night while walking back and forth and sitting, we will purify our minds of obstructive states. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus. It goes through the whole things. We are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Our bodily, verbal, and mental conduct and livelihood are purified. We guard the sense doors, moderate in eating, and we are devoted to wakefulness. No, it's not enough. Not yet. So the next section, mindfulness and full awareness. This is sati and sampajanya. These are very important words for our mindfulness practice. What more is to be done? You should train thus. We will be possessed of mindfulness and full awareness. We will act in full awareness when going forward and returning. We will act in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away. We will act in full awareness when flexing and extending our limbs. We will act in full awareness when wearing our robes and carrying our outer robe and bowl. We will act in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food, and tasting. We will act in full awareness when defecating and urinating. We will act in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, walking, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. So, full awareness is this attempting to maintain a mindfulness throughout all of our activities. While we're doing these activities, while we're doing whatever we're doing in our daily life, while we're at work, while we're cooking our meals, whatever we're doing, being mindful. And this mindfulness means continuing to remember to bring our minds to the present moment. When we're sitting down and we're trying to follow our breath, and then whoop, we're in a thought moment, and we go away, and we're wrapped up in whatever the thought is, and then it's like a bubble burst, and we're dropped back into awareness. Mindfulness is then when we decide, okay, you remember, now it's time to put my awareness back onto whatever the object is, my breath, etc. That's mindfulness. And full awareness is when we are engrossed in what we are doing. We are watching and observing and not distracted by all kinds of other things. We are doing this practice. And even when we're going to the bathroom, the Buddha wants us to be aware. So next time you go to the bathroom, don't bring your cell phone. Go to the bathroom and be mindful of all that is happening. Okay, so bhikkhus, you might think thus. No, there is more. That's possible. Although I'm sure they still were able to find some kind of distraction. If you look at places like ancient Rome, right, it's like there was like public bathrooms and you just kind of sat next to each other and went to the bathroom. So there, people probably, going to the bathroom and talking. So they didn't, so instead of texting your friends while you're in the bathroom, you can just talk to them right now. So there's the human mind is no different then as it is now. Any kind of distraction is something that we like to latch on to. Okay, so the next section, abandoning of the hindrances. What more is to be done? And hopefully you all are not suffering from the hindrance of sloth and torpor right now, being bored and tired of the sutta. I see a lot of heads nodding. But that's only because you're away. I know. This is not exactly the easiest and simplest sutta. Um, so, abandoning of the hindrances. What more is to be done? Here, a bhikkhu resorts to a secluded resting place, a forest, a root of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. On returning from his alms round and after his meal, he sits down, folding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect and establishing mindfulness before him. Abandoning covetousness for the world, he abides with a mind free from covetousness. He purifies his mind from covetousness. Abandoning ill will and hatred, he abides with a mind free of ill will, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. So this is you're sitting down and you're cleansing your mind. You're allowing your mind to let go of these attachments and aversions. And of course, this is a lot easier if you've set the groundwork beforehand. And setting the groundwork is exactly what the Buddha has been telling us, teaching us what to do. Practicing our sila, practicing restraint in our senses and our eating, practicing our mindfulness, right? This is all setting the groundwork. And now we're getting into the meditation. Abandoning sloth and torpor, he abides free of sloth and torpor. Percipient of light, mindful and fully aware. He purifies his mind from sloth and torpor. Abandoning restlessness and remorse, he abides unagitated with a mind inwardly peaceful. He purifies his mind from restlessness and remorse. Abandoning doubt, he abides having gone beyond doubt. Unperplexed about wholesome states, he purifies his mind from doubt. Bhikkhu, suppose a man were to take a loan and undertake business, and his business were to succeed so that he could repay all his money of the old loan, and there would remain enough extra to maintain a wife. Then, on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man were afflicted, suffering and gravely ill, and his food would not agree with him, and his body had no strength. But later he would recover from the affliction, and his food would agree with him, and his body would regain strength. Then, on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man were imprisoned in a prison house, but later he would be released from prison, safe and secure, with no loss of his property. Then, on considering thus, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man were a slave, not self-dependent, but dependent on others, unable to go where he wants. But later he would be released from slavery, self-dependent, independent of others, a freed man able to go where he wants. Then, on considering this, he would be glad and full of joy. Or suppose a man with wealth and property were to enter a road across the desert, but later on he would cross over the desert safe and secure, with no loss to his property. Then, on considering thus, he would be glad and full of joy. So too, bhikkhus, when these five hindrances are abandoned or unabandoned in himself, a bhikkhu sees them respectively as debt, a disease, a prison house, slavery, a road across a desert. But when these five hindrances have been abandoned in himself, he sees that as a freedom from debt, a healthiness, a release from prison, a freedom from slavery, and a land of safety. So these similes are very apt. If you try to think about a time in your life where maybe your mind was very, very angry or fearful or anything like that, where a mind state that's very heavy, that feels like you're in prison, and then later on you felt good, you felt happy, joyful, and you notice how your mind feels really light and peaceful and calm and tranquil, and you compare these two, and this is exactly what the Buddha is doing with these similes. It's like being released from debt, from slavery, the freedom, a peace, a happiness, and joy arises from this. And so that joy, that happiness, naturally leads to stillness and concentration. Concentration in Buddhist terms, in meditative terms, we're not talking about you close your eyes and you, like an active will, you actively, forcibly try to concentrate. That's not concentration in this context. Concentration naturally arises when the mind becomes light and peaceful and tranquil. You don't even have to try. Your effort was in setting the groundwork for a peaceful, tranquil mind, and for that to lead to concentration. So, then we have um, the next section, which is the four jhanas. This is jhana is samadhi, deep concentration. And so we've set the groundwork before this by doing all of these things, by practicing our sila. This is the basis, the strong foundation upon which our meditation resides. So now we are into the meditation, into the concentration. And that is, you can think of it as a pyramid with the sila on the bottom. And now upon that firm foundation, we rest our meditation. And as you'll see, as we're coming close to the end of this, upon that sila and then that samadhi, that meditation, when deep concentration and stillness, we are able to see insight. We are able to see deeply how things are. And that is our insight. That is our wisdom. And that wisdom is the top. That is the capstone of the pyramid that rests upon our sila and our samadhi. So right now we're going to go into the four jhanas, having abandoned these five hindrances, imperfections of the mind that weaken wisdom, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states. He enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Again, this is not like physical, this is mental pleasure, mental feeling. This is not like a physical a pleasure of the body. This is pleasure and rapture that arises from your mind being free of these heavy states. He makes the rapture and pleasure born of seclusion drench deep and fill and pervade this body, so that there is no part of this body unpervaded by rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Just as a skilled bathman or a bathman's apprentice heaps bath powder in a metal basin and sprinkling it gradually with water, kneads it until the moisture wets his ball of bath powder, soaks it and pervades it inside and out. Yet the ball itself does not ooze. So too a bhikkhu makes this rapture and pleasure born of seclusion drench, steep, fill, and pervade his body, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Sounds pretty good, huh? This is the beginning of the payoff of all the work that we put in before. Again, bhikkhus, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, the bhikkhu enters and abides in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind without applied and sustained thought. So gross thought has been, at this second jhana, has stopped. With rapture and pleasure born of concentration. He makes the rapture and pleasure born of concentration steep, fill, pervade, etc. Just as we were saying before. And there's another simile which I'll skip. It's pretty much the same as before. Again, bhikkhus, with the fading away as well as rapture, a bhikkhu abides in equanimity. So all of these, the feelings of mental pleasure and all these the rapture that we had before has passed. And now we have equanimity, which is much more peaceful. This is equanimity is a mind free of like and dislike. An unperturbed mind. And mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure in the body, he enters upon and abides in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce, he has a pleasant abiding who has equanimity and is mindful. He makes the pleasure divested of rapture drench, still pervade the whole body, etc. I'll skip that because there's another simile. Again, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. He sits pervading the whole body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of his whole body unpervaded by this pure, bright mind. And it is indeed with this pure, bright mind in the fourth jhana, free of pain and pleasure, with equanimity born of mindfulness. It is in this fourth jhana that we have the best stable basis platform for seeing reality with insight. And so we go into the three true knowledges. When he is in this fourth jhana, this state, when he is concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the recollection of past lives. He recollects his manifold past lives, that is, one birth, two births, etc., to a bazillion births. Thus, with their aspects and particulars, he recollects his manifold past lives. Okay, when he is a concentrated mind and thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs his knowledge, directs it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. Thus, with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and he understands how beings pass on according to their actions. And the third knowledge, when he is concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the destruction of the taints. This is the destruction of greed, hatred, and delusion. Destruction of what keeps us mired in samsara. He understands as it actually is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. That is, he understands the Four Noble Truths. His ignorance is destroyed. He is an awakened being. That is the definition of right understanding or right view. Fully knowing and understanding the Four Noble Truths. That is Nibbana, the destruction of ignorance. And he says, okay, these are the taints. This is the origin of the taints. This is the cessation of the taints. This is the way leading to the cessation of the taints. When he knows and sees thus, his mind is liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from the taint of being, from the taint of ignorance. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge. It is liberated. He understands birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. So the Buddha has led us from the very beginning of the practice to the end of the practice in this one sutta. Okay, the final section, which is the Arahant. Bhikkhus, a bhikkhu such as this is called a recluse, a Brahmin, one who has been washed, one who has attained to knowledge, a holy scholar, a noble one, an Arahant. And how is a bhikkhu a recluse? He has quieted down evil, unwholesome states that defile, bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. That is how a bhikkhu is a recluse. And how is he a Brahmin? He has expelled evil and unwholesome states that defile, leading to future birth, aging, and death, etc. And how has he been washed? He has washed off evil and unwholesome states, etc. And how has he attained to knowledge? He has known evil, unwholesome states that defile, etc., etc. And how is he a holy scholar? The evil, unwholesome states that defile have streamed away from him. There's a lot of repetition here with a lot of ellipses, so I'm trying to repeat it in a way that's somewhat understandable. But it's the same refrain over and over, just using the last one. And how is he a noble one, and how is he an arhat? Evil and unwholesome states that defile bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death, are far away from him. That is how a bhikkhu is an arhat. That is what the Blessed One said, and the bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted with the Blessed One's words. That is the end of the sutta. Thank you very much for making it through all of the way. We lost a few people on the way for for whatever different reasons, but you made it. Are you all arhants yet? I don't think any of us here are arhants just yet, but the Buddha taught us in this practice the way to follow this path, the way of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is broken into the three divisions of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. You can see this as a pyramid, where Sila is the base, Samadhi rests upon our Sila, and the development of our insight rests upon both. So let's see if I can be fancy. I don't think I can be fancy. Maybe. Nope, I don't think it works. There's your somewhat pyramid. I actually worked on making a graphic of it because it's pretty. And of course, yes, you might see, you might look at this and say, well, this is like a lot of stuff. This is only for monks. Um, and it depends on how much you're willing to take on. Um, in the beginning, most people will take on a little bit. As their practice advances, it becomes easier and easier to take on more and more, because you're heading down the path, um, and you're seeing the benefits of the path. You're seeing the reasons why you want to do these things because of how it leads you to peace and wisdom. And so it becomes easy. And then eventually you want to renounce and become a monastic. Or at least that's how some of us end up getting this far. Okay, friends. I guess that's we'll end it here. Let me end this with our sharing of merits, which is our final act of goodwill before we end here. I just have to find it because I have not memorized it just yet. One of these days I'll find it. Never mind. Just think positive thoughts related to the teaching of the Buddha and wishing that all beings can share in these positive thoughts in this practice. And that's the good way to end this practice. Until next time, friends. Until next week, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. And may your practice flourish.